Hey everyone, it's Brett Hornby here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel here, and back from what's always the case, much needed vacation here, and eventually I'll probably make some videos on that down the road here about my experiences from that. But anyway, back to reality here, and here we are approaching Labor Day weekend, and as a CFL fan, some say that the real season doesn't start till Labor Day weekend here, and just like I did last year, I made my initial predictions on standings and playoffs and who I thought would eventually win the Grey Cup up at Edmonton last year. And then I decided to revisit those predictions on Labor Day last year and made some adjustments, and I also ultimately was right on who was going to be in the Grey Cup and won it that. But here we are now this year, and going to do the same thing here. I'll revisit what I predicted at the start of the year and who I think is going to eventually be playing the Grey Cup here in Calgary. And then, as we've gone through half the season, I might need to make some adjustments here. So let's dive right in here, and we'll see any adjustments I need to make and who I ultimately think will be playing here on November 24th for the Grey Cup here. As now it's just under a couple months away here. I mean, just under 3 months, because now we're in Labor Day weekend, and here we are. It's actually the 1st of September here, believe it or not, and summer is wrapping up here, and also hockey season is around the corner here too, so let's get going here. So if you go back to my original video at the start of this season, I made these predictions here, starting east to west here. So in the Eastern Division here, I originally had Hamilton finishing first with a 13-5 record, and now I'll say for the record, that was the only prediction that I was confident in terms of the whole thing here. So Hamilton had 13-5 first. Second place, I had Toronto at 9-9, and then third place, I had Ottawa at 7-11, and Montreal at 5-13. So that's what I had for the Eastern Division. So out west here, I actually had the Calgary Stampeders at 12-6, first in the west, followed by Winnipeg 11-7, BC also at 11-7, Edmonton 10-8 at fourth place. So I was thinking there'll be another west crossover here, and then I had Saskatchewan at fifth at 9-9 here. So that was my standings prediction here, and then running through the playoffs here. Well, since I had Calgary and Hamilton finishing first in their respective divisions there, they would have a bye right into their finals here. So if my predictions standings came to be, in the Eastern semifinal, you had the Toronto Argonauts hosting the Edmonton Eskimos, and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers hosting the BC Lions here. In the playoffs here, I had Edmonton over Toronto, and I had Winnipeg over BC. So then going to the East and West final here, where Hamilton would host the East final and Calgary would host the Western final here, I had Edmonton over Hamilton in the Eastern final, and I had Calgary over Winnipeg in the Western final again this season, like last season. That actually happened. So the 107th Grey Cup in Calgary, I had an all Battle of Alberta, and I picked Calgary over Edmonton. That's what I said then. But I think we'll need to make some adjustments here, as it happens every year. You always get teams that surprise and teams that definitely underachieved, and obviously that's happened if you follow along the CFL season. But this season's also been unique too, with all the injuries with key players, especially a quarterback and big name receivers and running backs. And they've been injured, and some teams have been having to deal without their starting quarterback for much of the season, including my Stampeders. And you got some other teams that their quarterback is done for the year, and in some cases, their next man up, has taken advantage of that opportunity and has flourished. And then in one team's case, they made some big free agent off-season signings, but I stuck a fork in them last month, and now it's how crispy you want and what sauce you want. So anyway, let's get to my new predictions. I'll start east to west, and I'll go from bottom to top like I did in that video. So now, go out to the east here. The Toronto Argonauts right now are in last place in the East at 1-8, and I thought they were going to rebound this year. I mean, they thought maybe this would be another year for James Franklin to get back and have another year of being a starter under his belt here, learning from the growing pains he went through last year. But James Franklin is one of those quarterbacks that got hurt, and Cloud Bethel Thompson has pretty much took over, and I like his upside, but he doesn't seem to be able to finish off drives here. But I'm still a little head scratched like Toronto. I mean, they got Darryl Walker and James Wilder Jr. and Brandon Burks has also been up there as one of their, and then you have Corey Chamberlain, one of the defensive-minded coach here. I definitely thought Toronto was going to rebound this year, and unfortunately, I don't think the Toronto Argonauts are going to get that much better here. So right now they're 1-8 last in the Eastern Division here. So I'm going to put them last, and I think they'll finish 4-14 this year. I don't see much hope on the Toronto Argonauts going on a tear in the second half here. And yes, it's looking like there will be another West crossover here when I get over to the West Division here. So I'm going to put Toronto now in last place in the East at 4-14 here. Third place, well, the Ottawa Red Blacks, I thought they would definitely take a step back this year, especially when they got decimated in free agency. I mean, Trevor Harris, Greg Ellenson went to Edmonton in free agency there, and William Powell, the running back, went to Saskatchewan there, and has a couple big names, and then Dominic Davis, who has been in the quarterback there, had a few flashes in the pan, but he's not as good as Trevor Harris. And Ottawa's now even thinking Jonathan Jennings, the guy that they signed from the Lions there, maybe it's time for him to be a starter and see how he goes. I mean, they still have Brad Sinopoli, but he hasn't been getting as many passes, and they still got Moses Madew's been out as a running back. But I definitely was right on the fact that the Ottawa Red Blacks, I figured, was going to take a step back here. Right now, as is recording, they're third in the East Division at 3-7, and I'm going to downgrade their record to 6-12 here. So I don't think the Ottawa Red Blacks are going to get back in the playoffs and get back to the Grey Cup here. But in their short history of the revival of football in Ottawa, they've had some success there, and they got strong management and ownership in place that it's going to work longer term for the Ottawa Red Blacks there, unlike the Renegades there. And then the original Roughriders had definitely had some trouble there after 120 years of existence. So I figured Ottawa was going to take a step back, and they definitely have taken a step back, and I think that trend's going to continue. Second place, well, I'm surprised to see these guys up here. Right now they are second in the East Division at 5-4. The Montreal Alouettes. I mean, when I recorded my predictions at the start of the year, that was right after they fired Mike Sherman as head coach. And then the fact that Montreal has struggled the last few years with the retirement of Anthony Calvillo, and they haven't been able to find a quarterback. The carousel's continued and spun really fast. And then there's also the black cloud about the Johnny Manziel situation, where he basically got banned from the CFL because he apparently wasn't seeing his specialists off the field to stay eligible. So you had that cloud. Plus, they eventually made the right call, in my opinion, when they it wasn't until week 4 that they let Kavis Reed go, and then there's still some uncertainty about the ownership. So all those things you'd think would lead into another tough season for the Montreal Alouettes, but actually at the start of the year, Antonio Pitkin was slated to be the starter here. He got hurt, but Vernon Adams Jr., or as you see on TSN, Milt Stiegel short names him as Vaj, V-A-J. He's actually flourished and become the new starting quarterback for the Montreal Alouettes there. And I mean, they still got, William Stanback, a running back there. And I mean, they lost B.J. Cunningham in receiving at the start of the year there. But, Gene Lewis has stepped up, and they had Devere Posey. They actually picked up Chris Matthews from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and then as a Stampeder fan, they still have a solid defense with Tommy Campbell, Cianti Evans, and Patrick Levels has stepped up as well. John Bowman, but I think the early head coach of the year favorite has to be Kahari Jones, because the Montreal Alouettes have definitely turned things around, and I'm definitely starting to be a believer that for the first time since 2013 and the first time since Antti Gildale retired, the Montreal Alouettes are going to get back in the playoffs here. So I'm going to give them a 10-8 record here. So basically, there's only one more team left in the East Division here. Basically, I swapped Toronto and Montreal here, where Montreal has definitely been a pleasant surprise this season in the CFL, and I mean, it's good to see finally some success come Montreal here. So the only team left I have not mentioned in the East, and that was the only team I was confident in, is the Hamilton Tiger Cats. They're first in the East Division at 8-2 there. However, they lost Jeremiah Mazzoli to the season there, and I know his last name is Davis. I forget his first name as they're recording, but he's done the job, but it's not spectacularly. But I think Hamilton, with a combination of they've built up enough space and equity right now, and the fact they're in the weaker East Division here, I still think they're going to finish like a 13-5 record here, but they could be vulnerable in the playoffs here, especially if a West crossover team manages to get to the Eastern Final here. So the Hamilton Tiger Cats, they still got Brandon Banks, and they're overall, I still think they could still manage to keep cruising along in the weaker East Division. And another head coach that has definitely been impressive in his first season as head coach, but both Kahari Jones in Montreal and Orlando Steinhauer in Hamilton, they've been on staffs in the CFL for many years, and they looked like they were ready to trying to take the next step to become a head coach there, and they've done obviously a great job on their respective teams here. So to recap here, I now have Hamilton still in first place. I got Montreal now in second place. Hamilton 13-5, Montreal 10-8. Ottawa in third place at 6-12, and Toronto at 4-14. And when I get to the West there, it's only going to be the top two teams that will make the playoffs here, because the West has definitely been the stronger division here, and the fourth place team in the West will definitely have a greater record than the third place team in the East, and that team will cross over and take that spot there. So now, going out West here, well, the four teams in the West are definitely, they look pretty close and have battled some injuries, but the one team has really disappointed in the West here, and that's the BC Lions. Right now they're 1-9, last in the West there, and I stuck a fork in them at the start of August because they have already lost season series with Edmonton and Saskatchewan. They haven't beat anyone in the West. The only game that they won was against Toronto, and that was on a missed field goal at the end of the game there. But they had Mike Riley, one of the best quarterbacks in the CFL here, but the big issue they have is definitely, well, one of the issues they have is not protecting Mike Riley, because he's been sacked a hell of a lot, and It's just seemed to be a dysfunction with the dysfunction junction that BC plays with the BC Lions. I mean, they have a young coaching staff, and as of this recording, when I mentioned about the offensive line, well, former Montreal Alouettes legend Ryan Chew, who was the coach of the BC Lions offensive line, was let go. So I don't know. I think it's too late for the BC Lions to get back in it this year, especially with the tough West and the fact that they're so far behind. I mean, they're 1-9. I think they'll be lucky to finish 3-15 here. So yeah. So I think the Lions are done. Toronto's done, and Ottawa's not looking like they're in good shape compared to the Montreal Alouettes there. So we might already know the 6 teams that are going to be in the playoffs here. So anyway, moving up here in the West Division here, I think 2nd to 4th is going to be so close that we're going to need season series to decide it here. But in 4th place in the West Division, I do have the Edmonton Eskimos. Right now, they're actually 3rd in the West Division with a 6-4 record. However, Edmonton, I still think they have a very strong defense. They definitely have a great offense, but Trevor Harris has definitely filled in for Mike Riley admirably, or very well for the Edmonton Eskimos for free agency. And then they got Greg Ellenson also from Ottawa there, but CJ Gable's also been a great running back there, and overall their defense is definitely very stingy and one of the top in the league here. But Edmonton does seem to have issues sometimes with penalties and discipline, and sometimes they win a couple games they expect to win, and then they lose those that you don't expect them to lose. So, but also the tough West here. There's going to be a lot more West of Division here. So I put the Edmonton Eskimos at 10-8 and 4th in the West here. 3rd place here. Well, this team actually have surprised how they've done as well. Right now they're 2nd in the West Division at 6-3 is the Saskatchewan Roughriders here. At the start of the year, I had too many question marks on the Saskatchewan Roughriders on Zach Collaros and his health there, and gee, it was first quarter, week 1, he was hurt, and then the next guy to have was Cody Fajardo, and other than one bad game that he had against Calgary there at the start of the year, and he did start off well, and then he had a bad game, and then he looked okay. But actually, as this recording here, the Saskatchewan Roughriders have won 5 straight games here, and definitely are looking good here. However, I don't know if they're going to be able to maintain this going an extra long winning streak here. But I also have Saskatchewan at 10-8 here, because they'll definitely have some more games within division here. But they definitely have been looking good. I mean, Cody Fajardo was definitely taken over the starting job. He's one of those guys that wasn't slated as a starter and has taken over and has flourished. Shaq Evans has been one of the big receivers for the Saskatchewan Roughriders this year, and then they still got Nate Roosevelt. And on defense, I mean, you got Michael Johnson, Charles Hughes, and then I forgot to even mention, but they still got longtime veteran Solomon Aluminium, who was released by the Lions and has been picked up by the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So he's definitely filled in admirably as well. And they still got Gain in the corner there for, they'll be aware for interceptions there. But another rookie head coach that's been a coach for a long time in the CFL that you might say, and he was just suddenly thrown in after Chris Jones took a job at the NFL there, is actually Dave's brother Craig Dickinson. I think he's done a great job of becoming a head coach and riding the ship of the Saskatchewan Roughriders there, and they definitely are looking like a serious contender here. But I'm going to say the line between 2nd and 4th here is going to be very close here. So I got Saskatchewan now in 3rd here. And 2nd place, right now, my Calgary Stampeders, they're 5-4 and 4th in the West Division here. They've lost the last 2 before Labor Day here, but I think Calgary, we also battle some injuries here, because at the start of the year, Well, Levi Mitchell had his shoulder injury there, and Nick Arbuckle took over and definitely has filled in admirably there and been one of the more accurate passers in the league up there with Cody Fajardo for Saskatchewan there. But one of the few glaring weaknesses so far from the Calgary Stampeders is just all the turnover in defense. Well, we lost our defensive coordinator to BC to be the head coach, and then some NFL cuts and free agency. Lost some guys here. However, I do factor into my prediction here that Levi Mitchell is actually going to come back for Labor Day here, and maybe eventually we'll find some consistency at the running back there because we've been having some injuries there as well. And maybe some NFL cuts could be coming back here. So, but I also have Calgary at a 10-8 record here, finishing second here. I'm going to assume that if we split Labor Day with the Edmonton Eskimos, we'll win that season series, and they already beat Saskatchewan once in Saskatchewan convincingly there. So I'm going to say there's going to be 3 teams here at 10-8 here. So there's going to be some tiebreakers in the season series here. So then the last team I do have listed, finishing first in the West here, is the Winnipeg Blue Bombers here. Right now they're 8-2, and they definitely have looked more great on defense. I mean, on offense, Matt Nichols, he doesn't impress you, but he does a good enough job to manage the game here. Lucky Whitehead has been one of their top rookies that has been a game breaker there, and then Darian Grant, or I forgot the first name there, but I'm still clinging about Grant. He had a big game against the Calgary Stampeders there, but defense are definitely stacked, and they got one of the clutch kickers in Justin Medlock here. But however, who knows about Matt Nichols, how long he's out for, because Chris Drevler has taken over here, and he's good for fantasy for picking up touchdowns on the ground here, but it depends on who gets the better quarterbacking for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers here. They're 8-2, first in the West right now, and I think they have enough equity built up that they'll likely stay in first place, unless one of the other 3 teams that I have clumped at 10-8 goes on a ridiculous run here and surplants the Winnipeg Blue Bombers here. But I think they'll finish 12-6 here, so I think they'll cool off a little just because of the tougher competition here. So now to recap for the West Division here, well, everyone moved except the only team I have still in the spot that I had in my original video was Edmonton in 4th place. Well, so right now I got Winnipeg now at 12-6, and then I got Calgary at 2nd at 10-8, Saskatchewan at 3rd at 10-8, Edmonton at 4th at 10-8, and then I got the BC Lions at 3-15 and out. Well, they've been out. Basically, it seems like they've been out since the beginning of August here. So now to set up the playoffs here, if this comes true, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers will host the Western Final, and the Hamilton Tiger Cats will host the Eastern Semifinal here. So then the Eastern Semifinal, you'll have the Montreal Alouettes hosting the Edmonton Eskimos, and oh boy, this would be a great, interesting Western Final. The Calgary Stampeders hosting the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Ooh boy. So playoffs here. I still think if Edmonton was going to cross over and play in Montreal here, I'm going to still like Edmonton's chances to beat in Montreal here, just because of I'm still factoring in Trevor Harris and his familiarity with the Eastern Division from his time with the Ottawa Red Blacks there. And Edmonton, I still think, is a little more experienced and stacked compared to the Montreal Alouettes there. I think they're a younger team that maybe have one of those lessons to learn to lose before you win here. So I got Edmonton over Montreal here, but I think it'd be a close one. And then I got to say Calgary over Saskatchewan, just because if we have Bo back and maybe a potential NFL cuts that because guys like Alex Singleton, Mark Michelle, and Jameer Thurman, they all were cut. So maybe they'll find their way back here in Calgary and have them for the stretch drive here. I got Calgary over Saskatchewan just because we got Bo, and he's definitely done the job. And I think Cody Fajardo, I mean, you never know. It's a one-game showdown here, and a crazy showdown here. But I got Calgary over Saskatchewan in the West semifinal there. So now setting up the finals here. You got the Hamilton Tiger Cats hosting the Edmonton Eskimos, and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers hosting the Calgary Stampeders here. And I'm going to give Edmonton over Hamilton here, just because I think, Hamilton definitely might get shell shocked here with Edmonton being a more, rounded up team, and the fact that they don't have Jeremiah Mazzoli in Hamilton. They say he's done for the year, but you never know here. But I'm going to still stick with Edmonton going on to the Grey Cup as the Eastern crossover here. And then I'm going to still say Calgary, even though they'll be on the road in Winnipeg. I still like their chances of getting out of there in the Western Final again this year, just because we got Bo, and even though our defense has had much turnover here, I still think our defense is definitely gelled together, and we can match up with Winnipeg here and play their game here. So once again, I'm still going to stick with the Calgary Edmonton Grey Cup here in Calgary, and I'm still sticking with my dream will come true, and I'll watch the Calgary Stampeders defeat the Edmonton Eskimos in the Grey Cup here in Calgary. And I'll add this extra wrinkle in here that I'm going to still say Bo will be our MVP. However, I'm going to give Corey Greenwood the top Canadian, because I think he's been a tackling machine. Plus, Jawan Brescison, my original top Canadian, he's done for the year. But one guy that might come back for the Calgary Stampeders to the stretch drive here, or might be next month, is Kamar Jordan here. So basically, I did make some standings adjustments here. However, unlike last year, I'm still sticking with my initial pick for who I think is going to be both in Calgary for the 107th Grey Cup and going to win it here. Maybe you'd still say there might be some bias here, but this Calgary Stampeders team here, we're not the same team as we have been the last few years, but this team reminds me a lot of the Calgary Roughnecks this past year, how we have pieces on the team that looked upon as one of the top teams in the league. They overcoming injuries, but I could see this team, if we get some injuries back and get together and go on a nice drive here at the start of the year, I think we could be, Grey Cup champions again this year. Didn't thought the Calgary Roughnecks were going to win the NL Cup there, especially how that season had gone. But I saw pieces on the team that said, you don't count us out, and that's what I'm still saying with the Calgary Stampeders here. But with all the injuries and throughout the league here, I'm going to say there's no clear-cut contender, even though you still see Hamilton and Winnipeg so much further ahead in their divisions. They're battling key injuries too. So I think this is still might be outrageous to have it actually happen, which is sometimes it's crazy. You make predictions and then it has it actually happen, or hear crazy rumors and it actually happens. See my James Neal trade video where we made a trade with the Oilers. But I'm going to say anything's possible in the CFL here. I think I'm going to say BC, Toronto, and Ottawa are out, and then the 6 teams that are in. In a one-game showdown here, I could see any possible combination playing here in Calgary on Sunday, November 24th here. But this is me revisiting my beginning of season predictions, and I'll do this every year as long as I'm doing this here. So anyway, if you enjoy everything I do on my YouTube channel, just make sure you like, subscribe, and follow along here. And hockey season's almost around the corner here, so there'll definitely be some more Flames and Hitman content here in the next month here. But the football will continue until we get to the Grey Cup and the champion is crowned at the end of November there. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video, and go Stamps go.